Hi, I'm Sue. Thanks for joining me for today's Bible reading for September 16th. We are reading in Daniel 4 through 6 from the World English Bible. Now, let me give you a little background and catch you up for where we are so far. Daniel is the fifth of the 5 books of the major prophets from the Bible, and it begins when Nebuchadnezzar invades Jerusalem and takes Daniel and his friends captive to Babylon. So far, in chapters 1 through 3, we had that exile to Babylon. They had to walk 800 miles. Well, I'm assuming they walked. I don't really know, but it was 800 miles. Can you imagine being taken that far from home? This is the first wave of invasion and groups that they take to Babylon from the area. You can also find the story in 2 Kings 24. So I'm going to recommend that you, and I'll put these links down in the description, that you get the Bible Project. These are both YouTubes. The Bible Project overview of Daniel. I believe it's called Overview Daniel. And also the Introduction to Daniel that I did a couple years ago. Both will give you a good look at this book that'll help, just help us understand it better as we read through. I recently re-listened to both of those, or rewatched them. And I've said it before, but the Bible Project's awesome. They do a graphic drawing. I'm not sure how to phrase that. As they're explaining it, you watch them kind of visually draw out the story while they're telling it. So that's pretty neat. Another unique aspect of this book is that it's written in 2 different languages. Chapter 1 is Hebrew, and chapter 2 through 7, Aramaic, and then the rest of the chapters in Hebrew, 8 through 12. So 12 chapters in all in this amazing prophetic book. There's much to say about it, which I won't go into. It's all in those overview videos. But so far in chapters 1 through 3, just a quick recap, we have the captivity, Daniel and his friends taken captivity. We have the Daniel fast. We have Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel interpreted of the statue with the kingdoms, the kingdom of gold, which was Nebuchadnezzar's empire, the kingdom of silver, then bronze, then iron, then clay and iron. And like I said, the gold was Neb's kingdom. I like to call him Neb. Neb's kingdom. The silver was the Medo-Persian kingdom. The third, at least this is what has been taught, the third is the Macedonian Grecian Empire, and then the Roman Empire, and then the clay iron is debated. It's a future empire, and then this great rock that comes and demolishes this statue. And then we have the Daniel's friends in the fiery furnace. And then we're coming to today's section 4 through 6. So here we have the kings, Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. Those are 2 of 4 kings talked about, or Babylonian kings talked about in Daniel. There are other kings, for instance, from Judah and Jerusalem that are spoken about, but just these 4 kings here from Babylon in this book. So for today's chapter 4 and 5 go into those kings. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar, when he turns into a beast, and Belshazzar with the writing on the wall. Some of you may be familiar with some of those stories. And I'm reading a note I wrote here. Oh, I thought it was interesting. Bible Project talks about that how man is, that this kind of theme emerges out of Daniel, that man is created in God's image to partner with God, but man separate from God becomes violent and beastly. So they kind of pulled that theme out of that image of Nebuchadnezzar when he became a beast. And if you don't know that story, you'll see it as we read through. And they related that to Psalm 8. One more note I'm looking at, bear with me. Oh, and then chapter 6. Oh yeah, they related that one I just said to Genesis 1 and 2 and Psalm 8. That's what it was. I couldn't read my writing. So you could look up those 2 if you want to make this more of a study. And then, as you know, to my point, I'm just giving this background information so that we can grasp what we're reading better. I'm not trying to turn it into an expository study here. Okay, and then chapter 6, the last chapter we're going to read today, pairs with chapter 3, where chapter 3 was the fiery furnace. Chapter 6 here we have Daniel in the lion's den. So another challenge of their faith, where in the fiery furnace, the friends refused to compromise their values. God stepped in and protected them. And then here we'll see in the lion's den, the same thing happened. So let's get started here. Proclamation. Nebuchadnezzar's proclamation. Chapter 4, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all the peoples, nations, and languages who dwell in the earth, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has worked toward me. How great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion is from generation to generation. The dream. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore I made a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and I told the dream before them, but they didn't make known to me its interpretation. But at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. I told the dream before him, saying, Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no secret troubles you, tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and its interpretation. These were the visions of my head on my bed. I saw and beheld a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and was strong, and its height reached to the sky, and its height to the end of all the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and it had much fruit, and in it was food for all the animals of the field. In it was food for all. The animals of the field had shade under it, and the birds of the sky lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head on my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from the sky. He cried aloud and said this, Cut down the tree and cut off its branches. Shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals get away from under it, and the fowls from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of its roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of the sky. Let his portion be with the animals in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let an animal's heart be given him. Then let 7 times pass over him. So you notice it went from talking about the tree as an object to, and as an it, to a he and a him. The sentence is by decree. So let me back up. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. So the tree had its leaves and trunk cut off, but the he, it says, had its portion with the animals and was changed from the heart of a man to the heart of an animal. This sentence is by the decree of the watchers and the demand of the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives to whomever he will, and sets up over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen, and you, Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. The dream interpreted. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was stricken mute for a while, and his thoughts troubled him. The king answered, Belteshazzar, don't let the dream or the interpretation trouble you. Belteshazzar answered, My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation to your adversaries. The tree that you saw, which grew and was strong, whose height reached the sky, and its height to all the earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit plentiful, and in it was food for all, and under which the animals of the field lived, on whose branches the birds of the sky had their habitation. It's you, O king, that have grown and become strong, for your greatness has grown and reaches the sky, and your dominion to the end of the earth. Whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one come down from the sky, and saying, Cut down the tree and destroy it, nevertheless leave a stump of its roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of the sky. Now, I wonder if that iron and bronze, what does that mean? Is that related to the statue or something else? Let his portion be with the animals of the field until 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and it is the decree of the Most High, which has come on my lord the king. that you shall be driven from men, and your dwelling shall be with the animals of the field. You shall be made to eat grass as oxen, and shall be wet with the dew of the sky, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives to whomever he will. Whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be sure to you. After that you will have known that the heavens do rule. Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you, and break off your sins by righteousness, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your tranquility. Sentence executed. All this came on the king Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months he was walking in the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke and said, Is not this great Babylon which I have built for the royal dwelling place? Is not this great Babylon, which I have built for the royal dwelling place, by the might of my power, and for the glory of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, a voice came from the sky, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you. So this voice came out of the air to him. O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. You shall be driven from men, and your dwelling shall be with the animals of the field. You shall be made to eat grass as oxen. 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he will. This was fulfilled in the same hour on Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of the sky, until his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. Neb's praise. At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, and he does according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth. And no one can stop his hand, or ask him, What are you doing? At the same time, my understanding returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and brightness returned to me. My counselors and my lords sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and excellent greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. See, earlier he was calling him the holy gods. He said Daniel's God was the whole, Daniel heard from the holy gods because he didn't know. Now he knows. He said, I honor the King of heaven, for all his works are truth, and his ways justice, and those who walk in pride he is able to abase. Wow. That concept right there, when people get it into their heart and mind, is life transforming, because it's a plumb line. When we get our life established on the fact that Jesus Christ is King of heaven, that all his works are truth, and his ways are justice, and that all who walk in pride he's able to abase. Well, if we just set our life on that plumb line right now, world of difference. That's where the peace comes in. That's where hope and faith and joy come in, right there. Just aligning ourselves with that truth. Chapter 5, verse 1, Belshazzar's feast. Now, this is the other king, the son, right? The son of Nebuchadnezzar. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded that the golden and silver vessels, which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, be brought to him, that the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines, might drink from them. See, now remember, we've talked before about the scriptures that said, it talked about people discerning between what was holy and unholy, between what was clean and unclean. Discerning what's sacred and what's not. And this is their lack of judgment right here, because they didn't discern that. Verse 3, Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of God's house, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines, drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of bronze, of iron, of wood, and of stone. The handwriting on the wall. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand came out and wrote near the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. The king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's face was changed in him, and his thoughts troubled him, and the joints of his thighs were loosened, and his knees struck one against the other. The king cried aloud to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold about his neck. and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing and couldn't make known to the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly troubled, and his face was changed in him, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. The queen spoke and said, O king, live forever. Don't let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your face be changed. There is a man in your kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. See, she didn't get it yet. And in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. The king Nebuchadnezzar, your father, yes, the king, your father, made him master of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting of dreams, showing of dark sentences, and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel. Oh, that's an interesting phrase. Dissolving of doubts. So this is a new translation to me, so some of these are really interesting. I want to look them up. So he had a spirit. She's saying that Daniel had a spirit that dissolved doubts. How interesting. All right, so she's saying, I'm going to read back a little bit. Because an excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting of dreams, showing of dark sentences, and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show you the interpretation. Daniel before the king. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, Are you that Daniel of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Judah? I have heard of you, that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light, understanding, and excellent wisdom are found in you. Lord, that's my prayer, that be found in me and at my family and all that are listening to this broadcast and their families, in the name of Jesus. Come by your spirit and let light, understanding, and excellent wisdom be found in us. In Jesus' name. Verse 15. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. But I've heard of you, that you can give interpretations and dissolve doubts. There's that phrase again. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered before the king, Let your gifts be to yourself, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king, and make known to you the interpretation. To you, king, the Most High God, gave Nebuchadnezzar your father the kingdom, and greatness and glory and majesty. Because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. He killed whom he wanted to, and he kept alive whom he wanted to. He raised up whom he wanted to, and put down whom he wanted to. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. He was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the animals, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. Now I wonder how long it had been since that, and just think how much Daniel had grown in wisdom. I mean, you know, that wisdom ferments after time, right? So Daniel and all his friends, if they're even still living, are older now and even wiser. You know, they've watched all this go on. I mean, look at the transition from when they were taken captive and probably traumatized for quite some time to now they've settled in, they've trusted God in this foreign land, and he's been faithful to them, and they're just walking in their purpose here, you know, trusting God and just staying in faith no matter what they came up against. It's quite remarkable. So you can imagine, here's Daniel recounting the story that happened however many years ago. So he's telling the king about what happened to his dad, and he says, he was fed with grass like an oxen, and his body was wet with dew from the sky, until he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men, and that he sets up over it whomever he will. You, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this, but you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you. And see, there's another principle that just came to mind. It says he knew. Belshazzar knew all this happened to his dad, but he chose to ignore it. And, you know, the things you don't deal with are the things that they're going to come right back around. Whatever we don't deal with is going to come back around to us to deal with. There's no way around it, right? So here he is. It's come full circle. He said, you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and you have brought the vessels of his house before you. And you and your lords, your wives and your concubines, have drunk wine from them. You've praised the gods of silver and gold and bronze and iron and wood and stone, which you don't see or hear or know. And you have not glorified the God in whose hand your breath is, and whose are all your ways. That's kind of awkward. Let me read that again. So it says, you've praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, stone, which you don't see or hear or know, and that's because they don't exist, right? And you've not glorified the God in whose hand your breath is, and whose are all your ways. Then the part of the hand was sent from before him, and this writing was inscribed. Inscription's interpretation. This is the writing that was inscribed. Many, many tekel upharsin, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has counted your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you are weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar commanded, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a chain of gold about his neck and made proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night Belshazzar the Chaldean king was slain. Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. The plot against Daniel, last chapter. It pleases Darius to set over the kingdom 120 local governors who should be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was one, that these local governors might give account to them, and that the king should suffer no loss. Then this Daniel was distinguished above the presidents and the local governors, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Then the presidents and the local governors sought to find occasion against Daniel as touching the kingdom, but they could find no occasion or fault, because he was faithful. There wasn't any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, and it sounds like things going on today, doesn't it? There wasn't any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, we won't find any occasion against Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Then these presidents and local governors assembled together to the king and said, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the deputies, local governors, the counselors, and the governors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a strong decree that whoever asks a petition of any god or man for 30 days, except of you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish this decree and sign the writing that it might not be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which doesn't alter. Therefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Daniel in the lion's den. When Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house. Now his windows were open and his room toward Jerusalem. And he kneeled on his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before God as he did before. Then these men assembled together and found Daniel making petition and supplication before his God. Then they came near and spoke before the king concerning the king's decree. Haven't you signed a decree that every man who makes a petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered, this thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which doesn't alter. Then they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who is the children of captivity of Judah, doesn't respect you, O king, nor the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was very displeased, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored until the going down of the sun to rescue him. Then these men assembled together to the king and said to the king, Know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. The king spoke and said to Daniel, Your God whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. A stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. No musical instruments were brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. Daniel released. Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. When he came near to the den of Daniel, he cried with a troubled voice. The king spoke and said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, is your God, whom you serve continually, able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, and they have not hurt me, because as before him Innocence was found in me, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm. Then the king was exceedingly glad, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken out of the den, and no harm was found on him, because he had trusted God, because he had trusted in his God. The king commanded, and they brought those men who had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children, their wives, and the lions mauled them, and broke all their bones in pieces before they came to the bottom of the den. Daniel honors God. Darius honors God. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, languages who dwell in the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever. His kingdom is that which will not be destroyed. His dominion will be even to the end. He delivers and rescues. Yes, he still does that today. He works signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, still does that today. And who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions? So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. There's the last king of the book, and that's the end of that. So the last sentence. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So again, there you have your 4 kings of Daniel: Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, and Cyrus. So that's it for today's Bible reading. You invested in the Word of God. You can expect to bear fruit of that. You know, the Bible says when you sow to the flesh, you reap corruption. When you sow to the Spirit, you reap life everlasting. So that's it for now. Until next time, God bless you.